You're listening to the Left Behind Game Club.
Welcome to the Left Behind Game Club. Left Behind looks to replicate the environment when games were first released and establish a community of people playing the same game at the same damn time. I'm your host, Jacob McCourt, and with me, Mike and Mo. Mike, why don't you introduce yourself first?
Hi, my name is Michael Ruffalo, and I'm a marketing consultant hoping to get into the video game industry.
Mo Murtati over here, developer working on apps and games, everything in between, and really like video games and excited to do this with you guys.
And I guess I'm an aspiring radio personality, hence the reason why I went up here. But I also have a passion for games. So the first game that we have is Shadow of the Colossus. But before we get to that, Mike, maybe you want to just talk about why we decided to do this podcast.
Yeah, I think that's a great idea. We should probably outline why this thing exists to begin with and outline it for people. So I think it really came out of talking with you guys and realizing that the way the industry has developed and moved on, when we were younger and we were coming up, everyone was playing the same game at the same time, and it was easy to have those discussions with people. You knew that if they liked video games, you could almost definitely know the exact games that you could touch with. And now gaming has grown, and that's fantastic. But one of the consequences of it growing and being as big as it is that when you find out someone's into games, they could be playing a game that you've never heard of, that you've never touched, that you're unaware of, and it's tougher to find those in-person conversations that you used to have before. And so I think one of the things that we want to do is bring some of that discussion back, and especially when we have backlogs as big as we do, with so many games being remastered, it's nice to be able to recapture some of that energy that was there at the time and make it feel like you're playing along at the exact same time as everyone else. So that's my short little take on why I think we exist. I don't know how you guys feel.
Yeah, same thing. Kind of just exactly what you said. Reliving those games that we used to play. Especially the ones that maybe no one's ever seen, no one's ever heard of, and maybe they've heard someone mention it. This is kind of their chance to see what that's all about and maybe play along, because that's kind of part of it as well.
Yeah, and I don't know if it's because my habits have changed, but I feel as though I don't play games when they come out anymore. I used to be kind of an adamant new release, I'll play it when it comes out kind of guy, but these days I rarely play a game the day it comes out. And what sucks is you miss on kind of the zeitgeist of that first day when everyone's talking about it, because if you play it even 2 months later, the community might not necessarily be there. I think of something like Evolve, which is probably a bad example, but I tried to play it a few months after release and there's not anyone playing it. So bad example, but I think you understand my point.
No, I completely agree. I think the one that strikes me right on the forehead is Fez. Fez is so much that you have to deconstruct, and there's all these little puzzles that the community comes together to figure out. And if you came to that game a month or two after it was released, everything's already been solved already. It's easy to go and find all of the answers, and you miss some of that great community interaction that those games facilitate.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so with that, our first game is Shadow of the Colossus. It's a game that came out many moons ago, I think 2005, for the PlayStation 2 originally, has been re-released on the PlayStation 3 as a part of a bundle. But we decided to pick this game. Why do you think we decided to pick this one to start?
Well, I don't know. I think we wanted to pick something that maybe some people played, some people didn't play, kind of have something that has a little bit of backbone, and I especially have always been a big fan of it. As you guys know, I've ranted and raved about it in several times when we've talked about different games. How I was introduced to it, it was literally one of those $29 bin games where you go with your parents,
Wow.
You sit there, they're like, hey, you know what, go if you find something you like, you kind of talk them into buying it for you. That was it for me. It was kind of just shopping around. I didn't know anything about it. I just knew I wanted a video game because it was my life back in the day.
Did you get a greatest hits version?
Okay, so I bought 2 copies of it. The first time I bought it, it wasn't a greatest hits. It was just a $29.99 bin game. And then the second time I bought it, when I bought a PS2, once the PS3 came out, I bought the greatest hits version because I wanted to play it again. So it was a very organic discovery, nothing really that big. And even while going through it, I know we'll talk about it later, but it was like, what did I get myself into? Like, I wasn't expecting this type of game, if that makes sense, because usually I was stuck with those like story games, or you play those multiplayer like racing games back in the day. This was kind of a different experience, and that's why I kind of always talk to people about it, and I still have it in my top 5 favorite video games of all time, both for nostalgic purposes and for it kind of catching me off guard.
Yeah, for me, I think it was a great idea to do, because it's one of those staples that clearly Sony keeps remastering it or recreating it generation after generation since its release. And it was something that I've never played before. And Jacob, did you play it before this?
So yeah, I owned a PlayStation 2 copy back in the day. I think I bought it when it was the greatest hits. I played, I think, through the first 2 or 3 Colossi, and it didn't hook me. I don't know what it was, if there were other games at the time that hooked me instead, but I just didn't. It didn't stick with me, and I like I said, first 2 or 3 Colossi, and then I stopped playing it. So this is the first time that I'm actually gonna go through the game in its entirety, and I think it's a great time to do so, especially given what's happening with the PlayStation 4 version that's coming out soon, right, Mike?
Yeah. So E3 just is in the middle of happening right now. And at Sony's press conference, they said Studio Japan, in collaboration with Bluepoint, is going to be creating a new version of Shadow of the Colossus. So on the PS3, they did a remaster of it, and now Bluepoint's doing a remake of it. And so far, it seems like it's going to be the exact same content, only an updated control scheme with the original tucked in there if you still want to play it that way. But yeah, it seems like we picked the right game at the right time.
And as you say that, so just so everyone listening can know, I decided not to watch anything. And I'm going to watch it while you guys keep talking, to try to see what they're doing with this new game. Because once again, really close to my heart. I hope it's either remastered or they add a few couple things, but we'll see. Anyways.
Yeah, especially given how, and I'm sure we'll talk about this later, but to me the game feels very dated. I'll leave it at that. I guess maybe to start, I'll just say, yeah, he's listening to it. We'll start
first
by
First thing, pixels on pixels. Oh, I don't know, Jake. You played the PS3 version, so it probably looked better than the PS2 one.
No, I'm playing the PlayStation 2 version on a PlayStation 3.
Oh my gosh. Okay.
I'm playing the PlayStation 2 on a big old fat PlayStation 2.
Nice.
Yeah, 480p on a 1080p TV.
Oh, God.
Yeah, I have my aspect ratio right here. It's 512 by 448 of like potato pixels.
I have it on progressive scan, but it's not doing much better.
Okay, yeah, and then this trailer is just, that's my favorite Colossi right now. Oh my gosh.
So while he watches that, I just want to warn everyone that we will be spoiling the first half of the game, so the first 8 Colossi, and then the next episode that we'll cover the back half of the game, but anything kind of in the first 8 Colossi is fair game. So with that, because Mo is still watching the first bit of that trailer.
Over, and it was great.
How do you feel?
It's over, and it was great. It looks beautiful. It's exactly like the game we're playing. It's the game I remember, but it just looks better. It looks really good.
Well, then why don't you start and talk about? Why don't you talk about how you feel about the game in general to start?
Yeah. So, like I mentioned, it's unique. So, for those of you who haven't played it, or maybe you're just about to play it soon, it's essentially I label it as a puzzle game where you play this character who, for some reason, has to carry on and fight these massive beasts / titans / whatever you want to call it, figures, and each one has either a weak spot or a unique way of tackling them, and there's not really much that kind of guides you. It's kind of like, hey, here's a sword, here's a bow and arrow, hunt these guys down and take them down however you may. And being like a lover of puzzles growing up, it kind of just it was the game. It was the one that kind of like kept me really interested, even 10-15 years down after the time has passed.
And it seems like you're not the only one, considering that Sony keeps remastering it and putting it out there. And
and I can't remember if I've seen the number somewhere, but I think it was like top 5 PS2 game, or if you ever look at those lists, the top 10 PS2 games of all time.
Are you talking about sales or?
No, just like
critical
like,
acclaim.
The review Exactly.
Oh,
The
okay.
games, when they say what are the best games that came out for these consoles, the PS2 one, I want to say every single one I've seen has it somewhere in the top 10, for various different reasons. But I think the fact that it's unique, it's different, and it's the way it plays, I think that those are big factors in it. Yeah. Let's see here.
Mike, how do you feel about it in general?
Yeah, so I felt that one, it was clearly from a design of the past. There were a variety of little things that I've grown accustomed to playing games in the modern era, where you don't have to worry about saving, you don't have to worry about checkpoints and things like that. You know that if you die at the boss, it's going to start you right back at the beginning of the boss.
With that, just as a heads up, there are checkpoint locations where you can save.
There are.
But they
What?
don't kind of like, they're not standing out. They're random buildings. Yeah, I know.
You have to
I
go
didn't know
up
about
and
it the first
pray
time
in
I
front of
played.
them.
Yeah, so there are checkpoints. You just they don't stand out that well. But yeah, they are there.
Yeah, it's just I completely recognize that they're there. It's just the difference of having to go and actively save at that place versus the game knowing that, like, oh, okay, well,
Yeah.
chances are you're likely to die here, and when you start back, you don't want to make another trek across this barren wasteland.
Yeah. You know what that reminds me of? That reminds me of like someone like they're playing an old game for now, and they're like, "What? There's no VR? What kind of pagan game is this?
Right. Yeah.
What? There's no checkpoint saving? Like, do they even know how to dev? Like, what's going
we'll
on?"
be living in that future soon enough, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
But yeah, when I started up this game, first I was kind of surprised that there was as much of a story as there was.
Yeah.
And it really struck me as, in the vein of Zelda, as odd as that might sound, that you're a character with a sword, you're completing this quest to save this girl or this princess, and you have to tackle these bosses along the way. And it seems to be based around platforming and then completing a battle. That's what struck me when I first started playing the game. I really, really dislike the controls, and it struck me as very, very old. I think the thing that maybe annoys me the most is X and triangle. Triangle being jump instead of
Yes.
X. That's caused me to die, I think, once or twice, and it's
I hear ya.
or miss a jump and a grab. The other thing is that I don't think it quite makes clear all of your control options. So I think it's the third or fourth Colossi where you have to swim under a bridge to get into the space.
Mm-hmm.
I couldn't. It took me forever. I had to. I was in the water swimming around at the slowest speed possible, and trying every button I could until I finally pulled up a wiki, because I'm too old to spend all day trying to figure out how to get through this stuff.
And you know what's
and I
crazy?
found that
Back in the day,
R1
those are the games that, like, you didn't have really a wiki. It was like,
Right.
hey, figure it out. You have no responsibilities. You have
Definitely.
weeks on weeks of just this game because you bought a game and you enjoyed it for a while.
Yeah, or you
So,
go
like,
into
hey,
a
if you
physical
did-
store and you buy a Brady Games strategy
Yes.
guide for $30 to solve one thing.
See, I never
Man.
did that, and I know
neither.
exactly what you mean, Mo, because when you were a kid, like, you had all of this time to go through these games, and I think this goes back to the feel of the game. One of the things that really struck me was you've seen the rise of, like, Demon Souls and Dark Souls and the Souls games, and how they're ruthless and they're tough, and when you beat them, you get this sense of accomplishment. I think it brings me back to when I was a kid. I bashed my head against the wall of these games nonstop, and I felt this great sense of accomplishment getting through this puzzle or beating the game, almost because it was so difficult to do, and because the design wasn't clear as to how you should be doing it. They didn't signal the right controls at the right time, or the breadcrumbs, the checkpoints, things like that. So when I go back to the feel of the game, it really strikes me as something that this was an era of the challenge was just ever present, and
you were okay with it the
Yeah.
whole time. It's just like, hey, that was part of it. I paid my parents at the time, obviously, for all of us. My parents paid the $30, $40, and this is a great little bit of $30 or $40.
Yeah, I definitely appreciate that challenge when it comes to the feel. Jake, what was your take on it?
As far as like the control, I just kind of going back to that, I just wanted to make the point about the camera. We haven't necessarily talked about the camera. It struggles, and I mean, this is now a 12-year-old game, so I understand at the time the camera was probably average at best, but the camera's bad. But what strikes me as something that's even more painful to deal with is the horse controls.
Yeah.
Nobody when an object comes in his way and he just makes an abrupt stop. Is that what you're talking about?
That and making a turn, like it just is. It is impossible. Well, unless they were trying to make a horse that is actually like riding a horse in real life, where it's not easy to ride a horse. The horse controls are just bad. And I really hope that in the new version that's developed by Japan Studio and Blue Point, that they address the horse control specifically, because in some instances you have to use your horse to take down one of these colossi, and it just makes it very difficult to do so.
You know what?
100%.
I thought at first that it was, maybe it's a thing about the time. This game came out 12 years ago, but when I think about it, Epona in Ocarina of Time was not a tough horse to to control, to navigate, and that was one joystick, let alone you have two on the DualShock.
Mm-hmm.
But how many colossi did they have to deal with? That's the question at the end of the day. They had none.
No, I just think
that was it. 'Cause
point.
remember,
I just think about horse
each
controls.
asset, each type.
Sorry, what were you gonna say, Mo?
I was just saying. So one of the things you also have to understand is the colossi themselves are sitting in a gigantic environment. It's not really the console itself has to keep up. I'm not defending it. Actually,
from a technical
it's my childhood
perspective.
dream. Yeah, from a technical perspective, these environments are massive, vertically, horizontally, and just the depth. Some of these arenas that we fight these colossi in are gigantic. So the PS2 at the time is kind of fighting with rendering everything, making sure everything's developed. So the whole speed thing of the camera, that could have been part a performance thing. It's you know what, we might need it to go a little slower, or maybe the PS2 can't render it quick enough, but let's see if we can get any user experience
I have to agree. I was impressed with both impressed and shocked at how poor it performed at times. First, impressed with how big some of these colossi are and the environments that they're rendering them in. And then I was shocked at how bad the lighting could be at points, or how bad the animation
Is
of
it just
the horses
me, or does the whole game just look washed out?
Yeah, they definitely have some visual...
Jacob, when did you first play this game? Remember you said you didn't really, you went through one or two colossi?
Yeah.
When was that?
I feel like it was within the first 2 years of release, so it's...
No way, really? Okay.
Yeah, but again, like I said, it just didn't stick. I don't remember having any complaints about it from a graphical or technical or control perspective. It's just, it didn't hook me.
And that's the reason why I brought that up, was, so I played it probably around that time too, because it was $30 by the time I picked it up.
Mm-hmm.
But so when I played it, my memory of it, great looking game. The mechanics were fine. It wasn't really an issue. But then again, remember, this is you're a child. You're any user experience is a great user experience, because we don't have the privilege of playing in super 3D 4K gaming.
Yeah.
So it was you know what, it's bad, but relative to the time, it's I'm not going to complain. It's obviously not the best graphically beautiful looking game, but it'll do the job. I can spend hours on this game. For
sure. If I had been playing this on an old CRT TV, I'm sure it would look much better. But I'm playing it on a 1080p TV that's,
And your eyes are expecting it too. You're expecting a 1080 game.
Yeah, but I totally understand why they're going, and maybe the visual acuity isn't great, but the draw distance that you get, as you mentioned, in those gigantic environments. And I have to say, the first time that you climb on a colossi, and maybe not necessarily the first one, but maybe the second one, when you're on top of the colossi and you spin the camera around, or when you start getting shaken off, that's the first time where I just went, oh my god, this must have been a technical masterpiece back in 2005.
Definitely.
Yeah, no, you guys, I love this game. I really love this game. But yeah.
I guess I want to ask what your favorite moment is, what your favorite colossi would have been, or the moment that sticks with you the most.
Yeah, do you want me to go first? Because I vividly, like, even when I first played it to when I replayed it right now, it's the same Colossi. He wasn't that crazy. I can't remember the number. I want to say third. The towered guy. The guy that's super tall with a giant stick that smashes the ground.
That's number 3.
Yeah, so you got to remember, like, when you approach it, you see a giant piece of rubble. You're on top of this giant platform, and there's just rocks on the ground, and then the guy stands up. And he's like skyscraper size, and not only that, he's holding the CN Tower in his hand, and that's what he's using to bring doom to your life. He swings it, and just the speed of it coming down, and you're like, what is happening? I've gotten crushed by it several times. I remember when I first played it, because I didn't know how to run away. Oh. You can't tell where he's about to drop it. But after playing it so many times, I know exactly how to dodge him. But man, just when he stands up and swings, whew.
I was very technically impressed with that Colossi the third, because he's so big. And it goes back to, I think, what Jacob was saying earlier about how, you know, when they try and throw you off, or when you're climbing and you're at the top of them and you see, you know, just how much there is and how much they're rendering and trying to get into the game at one period of time, definitely highly impressed. Jake, what was your favorite?
I think for me, I don't want to say the game wasn't hooking me at first, but like I obviously had that first flash of, okay, now I understand, because the first Colossi is relatively small in comparison to you. He's maybe like, if you're 6 feet in the game, maybe this Colossi is 60 feet, which it's impressive,
small.
But it's small. And then you get to the second Colossi, who's just much, much larger. And then you're like, okay, all right. But for me, actually, it was the first time where my like, oh crap moment was when I was going up against the fifth Colossi, the flying Colossi. And when he started circling the environment, so you're in a kind of a water, on a river where there are platforms that are coming up, and you see this Colossi kind of just circling. And obviously the only thing that you can do is either stand in a spot or kind of shoot it with a bow and arrow. So shoot it with the bow and arrow, and it comes down towards me, and I just happen to be in the right spot because it has those wings that have like 2 spots you can grab onto, one on each side. And to me, when you grab onto that Colossi and go for a ride and actually see how far you are up in the air and how you're circling this seemingly much larger environment than you first thought, that to me was the first time where I'm like, okay, I understand why people are hot on this game, because this is genuinely cool.
Yeah, then obviously the worst part about that Colossi is getting knocked off, because now you're in the middle of this gigantic ocean trying to get to that one spot to try to get back on him. Oh, that one takes time if you don't take him down the first time you grab onto him.
Jake, I could not agree more, because that was my highlight as well. I did the first 5 Colossi in like an hour and a half, 2 hours, and I took a break after that 5th one. But it was exactly that moment of, by chance, jumping up and catching onto that hairy portion on the wing and realizing that, oh my god, I was going for this ride. That exactly the same. It just hit me of like, wow, okay, now I understand why everyone is so hyped on this game. This is an amazing moment.
And they get progressively longer. So like the first Colossi you can take down once you figure out the controls maybe in 10 minutes. But once you get to that point, like you're now taking, between travel time and time to take down the Colossi, you're taking easily 30 to 45 minutes. And I'm sure that's only going to get longer in some of the back half of the game.
It's almost, some of them are not even much longer. It's just like you have to look at it from a different point of view. So when they added that flying one, that was a completely different dynamic. Yes, you're finding a weak spot. Yes, you're like trying to stab the guy, but like it's like, okay, how do I connect with this? Some of them won't have any way of like climbing onto them that you see initially, but then like depending on the environment you're in, that kind of plays a role, and it does a really decent way of like giving you some kind of hints, but without telling you anything.
I agree.
Because I don't know about you guys, I think in the very beginning when you load the game, when you play that small Colossi, they might show you how to swing your sword. They might show you how to grab onto things, but then they're like, hey, figure it out.
Yeah.
Like we don't have the budget to give you more controls, or we don't care for it, or whatever it may be, but just figure it out. And they did that, and it's been incredible, because everyone's like, you know what? It's harder to play, but I'll mess with it. You know, I'll deal with it.
I think it was the 4th Colossi. That's the skeleton horse.
Oh yeah, that one took me.
Yeah, it took me a while.
When I was younger.
It took me a while to figure out, but then I realized, at first I was trying to use that temple in the middle to try and adjust the height of it to see if I could jump on it and climb that way. And then I realized those things hanging from its head that you have to climb on. I realized, okay, maybe if I hide in these trees, he'll lower his head and look in. And sure enough,
what?
That's exactly what happened.
Mike, so just to, I don't know, probably me and Jacob are on the same page. I went a different approach, and my approach was just based off of me playing it the first time, like when I was younger. I remembered how to beat this guy, but I didn't do what you did.
How did you do it?
I did use so just to explain to everyone that this Colossi is, like you said, a giant furry kind of like deer/horse, and you're in the woods, and the only kind of piece of shelter that you can use is this like 4-way tunnel that like you can hide from, because obviously these titans or the Colossi can smash you, so you kind of are trying to find shelter. So how I tackled it was I'd shoot the Colossi as it's walking past a certain entrance, because once you shoot it, it goes and checks the entrance that you're at. So when it goes to check, you just go to the opposite side and its tail is on the ground, and you can jump right on it to take down that Colossi.
Oh,
Wow,
and see, I did something
really
similar, except I used my horse to kind of draw his attention, and I think I would basically draw his attention, and when he started coming over, get off the horse, go down the tunnel, and go to the one that's, right across, and then, like you, Mo, get on the butt of the horse, or get on the butt of the Colossi.
So did you guys want some like general tips, I guess, on like some of like the...
Give me the hot tips.
Yes, here's a little trick move that I don't know if it works sometimes depending on the Colossi. So that horse, when you're galloping fast, you press that triangle button, you kind of get projected off of it.
Yeah, you fly. I was like, everything in this horse is so tough to use, but jumping off is a dream.
Yeah, it is. So that's the thing. Like, I never thought about using it for that Colossi, but when you said you jumped on your horse, Jacob, I thought maybe you charged it and then jumped and caught something. Because I don't see that as much like a difficult thing to do, and that's probably another way you can probably take some of these guys down. But yeah, that's cool how we all had a different kind of approach to taking down the same gigantic thing for a game that came out 13 or 12 years ago. I can't remember what you guys said.
See, I use that same approach for Colossus number 6, our old man in the basement of that temple.
Mm-hmm.
That one,
where
that
he
guy
wants
killed
to
me
destroy
twice.
everything. I let him destroy all of those things until I got towards the wall. I shot a couple arrows at him, and when he bent down, I jumped on his beard and went to town.
Yeah, so with me, when I tackled that guy, so like exactly what you said, big giant bearded guy, kind of similar to the first Colossi, but you're inside of like a cave with him, so there's nowhere to run. So me, when I first saw him, because when you spawn with this guy, he's right next to you. He's standing right next to you, and it's like, okay, what do I do now? There's no way I can take him down. He charged at me, crushed me, and then as soon as he took down a building, I saw the environment change, and just me playing this game before, I'm like, if something's changed with this environment, it has to do with like how to defeat him in some way.
Right.
So I saw a similar pillar thing. I was like, okay, let's follow me here. Crushed it, and then after the second one, I could see that far corner that seemed like a little bit of shelter, and in my head, I'm like, instantly, as soon as you get there, that has to be like a spot where you can kind of sneak him or something, and I did the same thing you did. I think I might have whistled instead of shooting the arrow.
I didn't realize the whistle would work on the Colossi.
Wait, the whistle works when you're not calling your horse?
Yeah, because it's noise. These guys, the Colossi are built to like recognize anything. So if you shoot something near them, I believe that also triggers them, but they're always looking to kill you. So
okay, I'm getting more and more impressed with this game as we talk about it.
Yeah, and just remember, it's came out several years ago. There was like really nothing kind of like it. I still think it's the best game ever, and I don't care what anyone says.
But for me, that same Colossi, I don't know about you, but I didn't clue in that the beard was a thing. So I would obviously like dump a whole bunch of arrows into him to kind of get him to come and look down. But I initially thought that you had to like climb onto his legs and potentially do something there, because I think back
like
to
the first Colossi.
one of the first Colossi where you had to have him swing and break his armor when he hits like that platform. His armor breaks and you can actually climb up.
Colossi 3.
Colossi 3, yeah. So I thought I'm like, oh yeah, I'll figure something out. I actually tried for a long time to jump from his right arm where he puts his hand down, from his right arm onto his torso because I thought that I could jump from his right arm to his torso, and I actually had to look it up and go, oh no, I can just climb on his stupid friggin' face, and there's his beard. I felt so stupid. I had an issue with that one and the next Colossi, the 7th Colossi, because I didn't know that you had to stop the quills. So I kept trying to climb past them. I'm like, oh, I can quickly make it past, but kept dying. And for both, I had to look up strategies. So I guess in that respect, I'm a spoon-fed, entitled gamer.
No, that's fair enough. Like,
you're just getting old, like all of us.
I guess I have the unfair advantage of like just slightly remembering most of them. But some of them were completely forgotten. Like, so the bearded guy, completely forgotten. The one horse, the furry horse with like that tunnel system, that one I remembered vividly because I was stuck on it for so long. And then once I figured it out, it's like, oh, that's glued in my brain. I don't think I'll ever leave. The skyscraper guy with the smashdown, memorable moment. So I want it was easy to remember how to take him down. And then the first one was obviously like spoon-fed because they give you instructions the whole way.
I found because the visual language in this game with the hairy parts or things that you can grab onto is so consistent across the different colossi that I found it was pretty easy to figure out how to tackle killing the colossi. For me, I found the difficult part, at least when I was getting towards 7 and 8 or 6, 7, and 8, was how to get to the colossi. I feel like I've had little trouble defeating the colossi themselves or figuring out how to solve their puzzles, but figuring out how to do all the platforming or getting through the environmental issues or how to get to the correct area, I found that's just taken the most amount of time for me. And
do you use the map at all?
Wasting time. I've pulled up the map. I spend most of my time shining the sword to see where I need to go.
I never use that map. Ever.
Yeah, I've never used it
for no reason. I think it helps in some way, or I might have like read somewhere it might help, but I've never had a reason to.
For me, I find that it's good to see when I've done a full circle of an area because it'll show you where you've been and where you started, and it shows your whole path. So I know that I've done a full 180 of a space or 360. And that's helpful to know, so that way I'm not like, is this a new spot? Is this just identical to another area? So I find that helpful. But yeah, like killing these colossi has not really been an issue for me. I think I've completed the first 8 somewhere within 3.5 hours, and I spent like 30-45 minutes with that last 8th colossi because it took me a while to figure out that you had to shoot him from below and not from the top, so that way he falls.
Oh, like stab him from below?
Well, you want to... The strategy that I use for that last biggest, or the 8th biggest colossi, is to lure him up to as high as you can, run down to the bottom, and shoot arrows from above, because the higher he falls... Or sorry, shoot arrows from below, because the higher he falls from, the more he's stunned, the longer he'll stay on the ground.
Oh, and you've noticed that, eh? I didn't even notice that.
Yeah, I hate the bow and arrow, honestly, with that 8th Colossi. It's
very Nintendo, like, aiming. Like, you remember with this, like, that Z stick or whatever it's called?
Yeah.
Like, it's pretty hard to...
Maybe that's...
I don't even know
maybe that's another thing that's making me think of Zelda, like a mature version of Zelda.
I don't think it's as good as a Nintendo bow because it's wherever that your body is pointing. So say that your camera is pointing forward, but your body is pointed to the right. Your bow and arrow will start on the right. So it's just a little counterintuitive to the point where if I have to take out the bow, I want to give myself a little extra time because I may have to move the bow and arrow 90 degrees to get to where I'm shooting.
Yeah.
But like you, I actually took that Colossi completely differently than you did. I actually just had him go to the bottom layer, and then I would just go kind of one higher than him and now it sounds so stupid, but I went one higher than him, shot him down, so he was only falling one story, and I would jump down.
Yeah, that way it saves time when you're jumping down.
See, I
but
tried
you get
that.
injured. You hurt yourself when you do that, right?
Yeah.
It's worth it.
I tried that, and it was taking too long for me anyway, because I wasn't consistently getting there in time to take him down. And so I realized, like, I just need to get him to fall from a huge distance and then stab him, a couple times.
Yeah, so funny story, I didn't want to tell you guys this, but I'm actually fighting that 8th Colossus right now, and I have been since the podcast started. So this whole time I've been multitasking. He has about like 10% health left, and the tactics I was talking about, I was doing them real time right now. I'll let you know once I beat him, but
Mo's got
just
some
as a heads up.
Mo got some hot strats in the middle of our podcast here.
The thing is, like, especially
attack him from below.
No, my tactic with him. So I didn't remember this guy when I first when we started the podcast right now. I approached him. I couldn't remember a thing, but he has glowing arms. So immediately, my thought process with all of them are like there has to be hints on the body, whether it's fur that's really low or fur that's high, but like for some reason you can kind of tell it might come down in some way. But with this guy, each one of his arms are glowing. And then his back is glowing. So when I first approached him, I'm like, yeah, let me just shoot him in those shiny parts. And sure enough, he starts climbing up and like attacking you. So I figured, hey, if he's gonna come up here, kind of like that one furry horse, let's try and run to the other side and see if I can get behind him. And then once I got behind him, I just take out 2 of his feet, and that's when he falls. And you guys know the story: stab, stab, stab.
Stab, stab, stab. I feel this game gives me, from like a story perspective, the jeebies, because I feel like I shouldn't be trusting Dormammu or Dormir or whatever his name is that's going to be saving our princess, our fair lady.
I feel like I'm killing babies.
Yeah.
Okay, wait.
They're not attacking us until we get there.
I have to stop you right there. What is this guy you're talking about, and who is he? Because to this day, I've played this game maybe 10 times in full. Like, I've killed these titans maybe 10 times. I do not even understand this story, and I'm okay with not understanding it. I love this bliss I feel of just taking these titans down. Who is this guy you're referring to? Is he that voice?
Yeah, so from what I gather, the game starts out with the main character bringing the dead body of a princess, some girl. Yeah. You don't really get the story, but he brings her to this altar, tears a cloth off, leaves her there, and these dark spirits materialize behind him, and he points his sword, the sword of light or something along those lines, at these spirits, and they disappear. And then there's a voice from above comes and says, "Oh, the sword of light." And you get into this discussion with him saying, "I need you, the spirit of the netherworld, to bring her soul back." And he says, "I can't, but or I won't. That's not the rule of mortals. But with that sword, we might be able to. And what you need to do is you need to take out all of these giants. And when you take out these giants, all of these statues will crumble." And to me, like, I think the name that he gives is Dormir or something along those lines.
I think that's right.
To me, it just these colossi don't seem to be bothering anyone or attacking us until we go and attack them.
Yeah, and you're right. It's almost sad when you kill them because like you just brought down this like majestic thing.
Yeah.
It's like, I don't know if I really want to do this anymore.
Yeah, and then the other thing about it is, if you think about like story tropes, it's often that like they have guardians or big things preventing some big disaster from happening or locking away some evil spirit. And it seems like, at least how I'm interpreting the story so far, is that we're making the deal with the devil, that these colossi are supposed to be here to prevent this guy from getting free. And I think in exchange we're freeing him so that way we can get the soul back. But how did you feel about the story, Jake?
I guess I feel like it's almost like a storybook, like a fairy tale when you're a child, and it's not meant to be a complicated story. It's just, hey, this princess, this woman has passed on, and we will give you the opportunity to bring her back, maybe if you do what I say. It gives me like a couple different vibes. Like I said, I feel like the whole time that like we're murdering unicorns just to get their power, or even from the look of their faces, like their faces look like babies' faces. They look like children's faces, and some of them just look so sad. And I'm just killing babies or murdering unicorns to potentially get the chance to gather their power. It gives me a very there's a lot of like God of War 1 vibe to it, in that like or was it 1 or 2, whatever God of War spoilers, where you basically murder every single Greek god to take their power. That's kind of the way I feel about this. And then I also get like a Mass Effect 2 vibe in that, remember those like giant baby Reaper from, I think, Mass Effect 2? Like that's the vibe that I get from these Colossi as well. Not some of them, but the ones that are humanoid, that look like basically large buildings with baby faces on them. I just feel like I've made a deal with the devil and then I'm just killing children the whole time. It makes me feel
we have a new byline
so
for
down.
you.
What's my byline?
Yeah, you're
Jacob McCourt, baby killer.
No.
It's your alias. Yeah,
Nobody wants that byline.
I think our podcast title has to be "Shout of the Colossus: Killer of Babies."
Yeah, that's pretty much. So, one thing about those statues, if you haven't noticed, or maybe you have, if you walk up to all of them, they resemble obviously the Colossi, and they kind of give you a little sneak peek as to like what's about to come.
Oh, see, I haven't gone to look at them yet.
Yeah, so it's I didn't look at them the first playthrough, but like after a while, I'm like, let me just kind of explore this area, and I remember them like for the flying one, you can kind of see wings there. It's kind of like a totem pole, but you can kind of see a little bit of like a hint. Whereas if you went there before, you would have been like, oh, I'm gonna get this really cool snake or a really cool this, whatever it may be.
The other thing about this story that's giving me this this hesitation is every time you kill a Colossi, their dark spirit or whatever is inside of them attacks you, and you wake up back at the temple, and they're just standing around you. And it's absolutely weirds me out. It makes me feel like there's something not right happening.
Yeah. I guess I hear exactly what you're saying. It's kind of like a weird thing, but it's all about like, I don't know. It's very mysterious. It's you kind of wake up, those guys are just around you, and it's weird. But you're still like, I have to finish the game. I have to kill these Colossi. You're still invested, and by the end, I found like, I don't know. It's not too. I don't want to get into any spoilers at all. But it's that emotion you guys feel of like, oh my god, I'm killing babies, as Jake would say.
Jacob McCourt, baby
develops
killer.
like. It develops continuously. Like it gets like worse and worse because obviously there's a different Colossi you're gonna encounter, and it's just it builds up.
Yeah, the whole like flying spaghetti monster that comes to take you away after you've defeated a Colossi, like that to me, there's just a lot of mystery around the game that I don't necessarily feel as though we'll get a resolution to by the end.
Right. Oh, and I'm appreciating that.
Yeah, one thing I want to mention to you guys. So remember early on in the podcast, it was like, oh, like the camera's slow, the mechanics are tricky, the controls. Well, those tricky mechanics, those slow controls, are making you feel all these kinds of emotion from like a PS2 game with potato graphics. That's kind of one of the reasons too. That's one of the reasons why I think it's a sweet game, is because like, yeah, it's not most polished. The horse kind of like lapses out and does its own thing every once in a while. Sometimes you can't jump on it quick enough, or you fall off of a Colossi just because you didn't press R1 quick enough. Mm-hmm. But like, you're getting all these weird feels, and like the storyline's kind of weird, but it's still affecting you. I think like bang for the buck. At the time, it's the reason why it's done so well is because of the total package it comes with.
Yeah, but what's cool is we're not only commenting on the story, like the arc completely, but we're also like talking about our own personal stories of storytelling within each Colossi, right? So you talk about how I defeated it. So I realized that it was aggressive, so I made sure to hide, and then I went for this part of his body, realized that he had this. Like, each of us is coming away with a very unique story take, not only from the arc, but also within each Colossi, which is cool.
Yeah,
I completely agree. I was feeling more down on this game until we started talking about it and finding out all the little tricks here and there, the different ways that you can tackle all these Colossi. I had just assumed that the way that I tackled it was the way that everyone was tackling it. And I find it really cool to hear that we've all been tackling it different ways.
And I think that's part of it too. It's cool. Like, obviously there might be a linear way, like the best way, but it's not the only way.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think it's a good way to sum up how to play this game. There's many ways to do it.
Yeah.
The last thing that I want to mention about the story is that I think the idea of leaving so many questions unanswered, like we don't even know who this girl is yet. this ambient storytelling that you're finding out a lot about the world. You're finding out a lot with just the way that you're interacting with it. I think that's one of my favorite ways to learn about stories or to experience stories in games. It makes me think of Half-Life 2, that you learn so much about the world just by being in it. And I don't know
as you go, you get pieces. Yeah, as you go, you get pieces here and there, and you're okay with not knowing much. Yeah.
And it's the spaces in between that allow your imagination to, go free and imagine all of the possibilities.
Yeah, not every game needs 1,000 audio logs and 10,000 fake emails that are written between fake colleagues. I mean, as a fan of the original BioShock, that has its time and place, and that has a place in my heart. But filling in those blanks when we talk together, see, I don't necessarily think if I did this by myself that I would have the same thought process about it. I might just say like, oh, it's lazy, it's like a children's book, like I have to interpret the story. Like I'm just thinking of like my inner game snob coming out just saying like, oh, they didn't fill in anything of the story, what am I supposed to interpret from that?
Right. See, the more that I've been thinking about the different types of media, the more I've been realizing that the less information you give people, right? If you think about like why people like books more than they like the eventual movie adaptation, it's because with the books there's so much less that it gives you, even if it gives you more events that happen, and it allows your imagination to fill in more. When you think of a movie, it's all there: words, pictures, sound, everything. You imagine it as if it was real life, because it's as close to real life as I think you're going to experience with a form of entertainment right there. So I love this idea of not filling in a lot of these blanks and giving as much freedom to the imagination to fill in as much as possible.
Yeah. So like I mentioned too, I was playing this game and I beat that Colossi a couple minutes ago. One thing I kind of want to randomly mention, because I'm just riding on this horse and just like going to nowhere. Next time you play this game, just spend like a minute or two just riding that horse and just watching its footwork. So it sounds like a really silly thing and a silly concept.
Honestly,
but I promise you. Okay, yeah, just walk slowly, or like just click X once to make it just gallop once. And it's Jacob, you mentioned it earlier, and I never really paid attention much to it. It's surprisingly realistic, like how it moves, how it behaves. If you like shake its head one way, it takes a second for it to whip, and then it finally moves its body because it's obviously a heavy object and it's trying to move its body just like a regular horse. It's not an instant gallop. And then the biggest thing, this was something that I noticed in I think it was an NBA Live like 2008 release when the PS3 came out. They were kind of showing off the PS3 performance and how now they're able to, like, when a basketball player is moving on the court, he's not just an object that swivels around like a pivot point. He actually has feet that move in that pivot point, so he looks like he's a natural person moving his legs. The horse is doing the same thing. It's not like a static horse that rotates on a single pivot. It's a horse with 4 individual legs that move left and right based off of where the other legs are, and makes it look like fluid. Small little thing, but like, remember, PS2 game, like this is, and then take into consideration like the giant like arena that you're in with every Colossi. It's something I don't know if you guys missed or maybe didn't notice, but something to check out.
No, I definitely missed it, and I go back and think about, as you talk about NBA Jam, I think about sports titles back in the kind of that era as well, when they started separating the ball or the puck from the players and made it its own independent object, and how players would react differently. I know, Mike, you're a big fan of FIFA. I grew up playing a lot of NHL. When they made that ball or puck its own independent object, game changer. So that's a bit of a non sequitur, but I think you understand where my brain is going.
Yeah, the horse is the puck.
Hashtag realistichorses.
Oh, it's so realistic. I'm in awe. I might seem like I'm not paying attention, but it's literally because I'm just staring at this horse as it runs. It's super cool. Anyways, back to the topic at hand.
Are there any other, we've talked a lot about the story, we've talked a lot about the graphics. I guess from here, I just kind of ask a final, does this game kind of hold up for you? Are you glad that you've kind of taken this journey so far?
Mo, you go for it.
Okay, so obviously I've played this game several times before. Last time I played it might have been like 5 or 6 years ago, maybe on the PS3. It still holds up to me. I have that nostalgia feel to it. Like it hits me home. It's my childhood. And you know what? You know how they say like never meet your heroes, like, or never go back to something that was great. I'm pretty content with going back to this. It's been just like I remembered it, if not like better now that like I can kind of see it from a different point of view, and especially that I'm talking to a bunch of people about it. It holds up to me, and if you guys say anything bad about it, I'm gonna feel personally attacked. So, Mike, you can take it from here.
Well, with a low stakes opinion on the line, not my entire friendship with Mo at stake, at first I felt like it didn't hold up, especially because of, we talked about it. The controls are slow, laggy, awkward. The graphics, I didn't really think met what I was expecting, especially on the TV that I was using. But the more that I talk about it with you guys, the more that I'm realizing all of these different ways to beat this game, to defeat these colossi. That aspect of it has really energized me and excited me about playing this more. And to me, that's a sign that I think it's still holding up. That's if we set aside entirely the whole concept of Sony continuously remastering and remaking this game as a sign that it holds up. I'm finding that our discussion right now has re-energized me, and it made me feel like I want to play this game more, to find all the different ways that I can do this. And I might even play it more than once. So I guess we'll see what happens when we get to the back half, the other 8 that we have to complete.
Mm-hmm.
Jake, what do you think?
I guess I would share similar feelings. I have a really hard time, as we get older, and I'm sure a lot of people listening can sympathize with where you're at. As you get older, and like I'm not even married or have children, but the demands on your time become greater as you get older, so it's harder to kind of set aside time, or no, you have to set aside time specifically to play games. And when I do that, I usually have a game and I just play it to the end, and I'm not really a 100% guy. Like, I don't know in my entire life if I 100%ed many games. All that to say, I will probably only play this game once, and only play it once forever. I couldn't tell you a game that I've played more than once. I'd have to think about it. I may have done it, but I don't play games more than once. But I think having this conversation with you, I agree, has kind of re-energized my feelings toward the game. But also, I'm really appreciative that we have this forum to be able to talk about it, and not only discuss what we thought. Like, a lot of us have similar thoughts about it, but we also have different thoughts. So I'm glad we have this forum. I only will play it once, but I think that when I look back on it, like a lot of the games that I look back very fondly, like I look back fondly on Legend of Zelda Wind Waker, that's one, for example, BioShock. I look back on those games very fondly. I think despite playing it 12 years later, and playing it on the original console instead of the PS3 remake or the PS4 remaster that's coming, I think that I'm going to look back very fondly on this game, but I don't know if I'd look back as fondly if I didn't have 2 people playing it with me. Because I think if I had it in isolation by myself, I would just kind of be like, yeah, whatever, it's good, it's fine.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, I hear you.
Any other points you guys want to bring up before we bring this one to a close?
No, just so the game plan is we're going to try out the next 8 Colossi and kind of give a quick little summary of that once we've knocked that out. Any timeline, guys?
I think we're just kind of, and Mike, you can kind of talk as well. We're trying to just feel this process out. I think, in future episodes, we'll kind of know exactly like, hey, 2 weeks from now, have this done. But for now, I think we're just going to kind of play it by ear.
Yeah. Feel it out. Cool.
Yeah, I know, Jake, you're just starting a new job, and we all have busy schedules.
Congrats.
Yeah, I just moved to a new city too, so this apartment is a mess.
You're right. Yeah, I can only imagine. But I found that this game is pretty quick to get through, and while each Colossi is taking more and more time, I think we can probably tackle another episode in the next week or 2.
Cool.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so stay tuned.
Stay tuned, and remember, you can see everything Left Behind Game Club at leftbehindgame.club. You can follow us on Twitter at leftbehindclub. And do we have other URLs that point to this site? I feel like you guys have bought a few. Please don't buy killingbabies.com, please.
That might be it. We might buy and just redirect
It's
it.
too
Man.
late.
We might as well.
We already own JacobMcCourtBabyKiller.ca.
No.
Great. No, regardless, if there are any other URLs, we can definitely post them, and they'll be available to everyone.
Great. Mike, where can people find you on the internet?
You can find me at michaelruffalo.com and on Twitter at RUFFOLOM. That's my handle.
Mo?
Same thing, except not with that name. Well, yeah, my handle's the same across the board. Every little bit of social media, you'll find me at MMURTADI. And then my personal website is the same thing, MMURTADI.com.
And for me, it's at Jacob McCord on everything, and not at jacobmccord.com, because that would be silly. jacobmccord.com. Guys, I want to thank you for your time today. It was very exciting to talk about the game. It's definitely re-energized me. Until next time.
Yep, see you guys.
See ya.
Bye. I don't kill babies.